This is the project we're going to be building together, a stylized hot air balloon. Envelope, basket, rigging ropes, constructed almost entirely by Claude using Blender's MCP integration. But here's the part I want to show you before we start modeling anything. Claude doesn't already know how to build this. Before we can model anything, it needs to study. And that's actually the most interesting part of this course. This is not going to be a traditional Blender modeling course. I'm not going to walk you through every hotkey, every extrusion, every manual step. The focus here is on a specific workflow I've been developing. One where Claude acts as the modeler and you act as the director. But the key thing that makes this work, and the one thing that most Claude Blender demos skip over, is the preparation step. Before Claude builds anything, we run a command that feeds it the relevant tutorial material. We call it Learn Video. The whole course is built around 2 steps that repeat every modeling task. Step 1, we run the Learn Video on a tutorial that covers the technique we want to learn about. That command downloads the video, transcribes it, pulls out frame at every segment, and writes a structured reference document. Claude can read all this documentation before it does any work. Step 2. With that context loaded, we open Blender, activate the MCP connection, and give Claude modeling instructions. Because Claude has just reviewed the relevant techniques, its responses are grounded in something real, not just a guess at what the thing that we want to model looks like. That's the loop. Learn, then build. Every segment of this course follows that same pattern. You might be wondering, doesn't Claude already know how to model things? And it does in a way. Claude has a general knowledge about Blender from its training data, but that knowledge is generalized and often outdated. It doesn't know the specific approach for a specific technique that we're trying to follow. It doesn't know the proportions, the modifier stack, the node connections, or the workflow decisions that make this particular version of the thing that we're trying to build look the way that it does. When we run Learn Video, we're giving Claude a precise, structured briefing on the exact technique we want to use. Think of it like a pre-production meeting before a shoot. You wouldn't send out the crew without a shot list in hand. Let me show you what this actually looks like. For segment 2 of this course, we're going to be blocking out the balloon envelope, and we're going to reference this tutorial. It's a balloon modeling walkthrough that covers the basic envelope shape, vertical panels, and general proportions. That's exactly what we need before we start. The command is going to download the video, transcribe the audio, extract the frames for each section, and generate a reference document that lives in our reviews folder. This takes a few minutes depending on the video length and your machine. I'll speed through some of the less interesting parts. We'll just wait for a second here while it downloads the video and organizes all the resources. Once it has reviewed all the files, it'll start generating the summary report. Once the summary comes out, we can see what it learned. Once it's finished with everything, it prints out a summary of everything that it learned. Gives a quick summary of what the video covered, the key skills that it should pay attention to, and if it's uncertain about anything, it'll ask questions to clarify. I can see it's got a couple questions here and regarding resolution, so I can't read some of the values. So I'm going to go ahead and tell it to go ahead and download a higher resolution at those frames so it can read what's on screen. Looks like it has one more question. It still couldn't find some values that it wanted, so I'm just going to go ahead and go in the tutorial itself and see if I can find the answer for it. Yeah, there's a very clear comment from the tutorial poster right next to the value that it's looking for. So just point it to that. And it should be able to pick up what it needs from there. And so I'm actually going to add this to my script so that next time it does that automatically. Just when it sees something that it can't read at a lower resolution, that it can just pull out a higher resolution for just the frames that it needs help with. So I'm going to ask it one more time just to summarize everything so we can double check. And that's why this technique is different. Claude isn't just generating generic Blender instructions. It's telling me specifically what it's going to do based on the material that it just reviewed. And the confirmation step is actually useful. It surfaces any gaps or misunderstandings before we've touched a single vertex. Now that Claude has its briefing on balloon shapes, we're ready to open Blender and start blocking. In the next segment, we'll use the MCP connection to have Claude build the primary balloon envelope from scratch. So if you had any question as to why we need to use the Learn Video or any other kind of structured way to set things up, it's a bit like using image generators without any control net. That is just asking for a random prompt and just keep rolling the dice until you finally get what you want. As opposed to providing a depth map and maybe a pose image if you have a humanoid character. If you provide those things, you're going to get the output that you were looking for. If not, you're going to get either a hot mess or just not what you wanted. I opened up a fresh terminal just to prove this, and all this terminal has is the MCP connection. It doesn't have any of the Learn Video notes, and it doesn't know anything about that. And so I just asked it, here's a bunch of reference images. These are all like nice looking balloons. Go ahead and, on your own, do the best you can to build me a balloon with the envelope and a basket and connecting lines. As you can see, it tried really hard, and it kept, changing things, but it just wasn't getting better. It just has no spatial reference. It can't feel its way through something that it doesn't have any information on. It knows, that's kind of a balloon shape. That works, right? I mean, yes, but no. Yeah, nah. So I just wanted to clear that up before we proceed so nobody has any question of why we're doing this the way that we're doing it. Before we go, there are plenty of tutorials and other resources to help set this up, but I'll drop some links in the description to help get you started. See you in the next one, where we see what it was able to learn and how well it can implement it. Thanks for watching. Hey, welcome back. This is segment 2.1. We've got the MCP connection running. We've run Learn Video on some balloon tutorials, and now it's time to actually start building. In this segment, we look at why we tried 3 tutorials before we found the right approach. Build the cycloid mesh that becomes our balloon, and then get the reference image set up as a viewport underlay. The shaping itself is in 2.2, the second half of the balloon envelope tutorial. Let's get into it. Before this session started, we ran Learn Video on 3 different balloon tutorials. The first used a UV sphere with proportional edging. The silhouette was not correct. The shape didn't read as a balloon. The second was a silent low poly video that followed the same approach. This one looked cleaner and the topology looked better, but still lacked the realism and the shape detail we needed. The third was a quick 2-minute video of a tutorial that uses a completely different approach, and that's the one that we'll be working with. Most of the balloon tutorials started with a UV sphere. You're fighting a sphere to get it into a balloon shape, trying to make the panels emerge from something that was never designed to have them. The cycloid gives you the panels that we want up front. It has the scalloped cross section, so we extrude it along the z-axis to convert it to a mesh. And then you already have the ribbed tube structure that the balloon needs. We'll pick up here where the second tutorial left off. I start with the standard prompt that gives it the resources it needs, what to ignore, where the reference image lives, and to stop and ask questions if it needs it. We'll just let it run through the information it needs to get set up. Looks like Claude is having some difficulty finding the extra objects add-in that we need, so I'll just go ahead and enable that manually. This is the feature that we need to create the cycloid. Now Claude will start building the cycloid based on the tutorial parameters. Now that it has the plugin it needs, it should be able to follow the tutorial. It's going through and creating the shape. Now it's adding the reference image, so it has everything set up that it needs. There is one principle that shapes everything we're about to do: the silhouette. In stylized work, the silhouette is almost everything. If the outline reads something other than hot air balloon, the model was not going to work. This doesn't read yet. It's an unfamiliar tube. Our job is to reshape it, fuller and upper in the 2/3, narrowing towards the bottom and closed at the top. Everything we do in this and the next segment serves that shape. Now it's going to try to edit the shape, and here's where the first issue starts to surface. Claude is trying to calculate loop position by the pixel measurements of the reference file, and basically it's guessing, and it's not working. The shape only has geometry or vertices at the top and the bottom. There are no intermediate rings. So essentially Claude is trying to move geometry that's not actually there. I tried to give it another prompt to tell it to try to follow the tutorial more closely, and it's still having issues. So I ask it again, are you just guessing or are you trying to figure this out? And it replies, yes, I see, I apologize, I'm trying to use the pixel values and that's not actually working. And this is sort of the limitation, is it can take a screenshot and look, but it has to do that each time, so it's not a very interactive process. And so I'm reminding it to take its time and not try to do everything at once, do one loop at a time, and then check after each change. So that's it for this video. We've got the cycloid, we've got the reference image, and we've got a basic idea of what our limitations are and how we should proceed. In the next video, we'll shape each edge loop until we get the silhouette that we're looking for. We'll create the crown at the top and add the final modifiers. This will be the most difficult and time-consuming part of the whole tutorial. Claude has difficulty with this type of visual and interactive modeling, but at the end, it gives us an interesting suggestion for the next time we need this kind of process. That's it for now. Thanks for watching, and catch you in the next one.